We put enormous energy into becoming someone worth wanting, but almost none into learning how to actually be with someone once they want us. In today's video, we're going to talk about why sexual connection is a skill that most of us were never taught, and what gets in the way of it across all kinds of relationships, and why the answer is less to do with technique. Welcome back, and if you're new here, welcome. I'm Cyndi Darnell, sex and relationship therapist, working with all kinds of people in all kinds of relationship configurations all over the world. And on this channel, we have the conversations that many of us are having in our heads, but not out loud. Here, we talk about relationships, desire, intimacy, connection, friendships, emotions, grief, and what gets in the way. So if that's what you're here for, you're in the right spot. Let's get started. Researchers are starting to call what's happening in our social lives relational poverty, meaning we have access to each other pretty much constantly. We're texting, we're on apps, we're surrounded by colleagues and acquaintances all day long. But something essential keeps going missing for most of these interactions. There's contact, but there's no connection. There's proximity, but there's no attunement. And attunement is a specific thing. It's not just being next to someone, it's actually paying attention to them and noticing what's happening underneath what they're saying. Being genuinely tuned into another person's experience rather than simply just occupying space with them. And what's being named in this broader cultural conversation right now, I think, is that we are losing that capacity across friendships, across families, across communities, that we're around each other, but we're not actually reaching with each other. We're not meeting each other. And this same gap exists in our sex lives. And to be fair, it's probably always existed there. But the difference now is that we're only just starting to have language for it. Because what most of us actually learn about sex growing up, if we're lucky, is that we perhaps learnt some biology. We learnt through culture and media and watching other people perform desirability, how to be attractive, how to seem confident, how to generate heat, or how to make an entrance and land well in someone else's attention. And so we optimize for that attraction. We optimize for that initial charge, for the moment of being chosen. But what nobody teaches us almost anywhere is what comes after that moment. Because sustaining intimacy is a completely different skill from generating attraction. And often these two get confused so consistently that many of us don't even know that they're different things. So attraction is what pulls someone towards us. But intimacy requires us to actually show up once they're there. Intimacy requires presence and curiosity and the willingness to know and be known rather than just admired. It requires you to give your attention as much as you seek it. And so most of us have practiced one of these things often extensively and the other barely at all. So we arrive in sexual encounters, in new relationships, in long-term partnerships, in situationships, in casual arrangements, having refined only the approach and having almost no tools for what follows. And then we wonder why it keeps feeling like something is just out of reach, even when there's nothing obviously wrong in the relationship. Now, there's something really specific I want to name here because it often gets missed in our conversations about sexual connection. So when we're in new or early encounters, there's this kind of internal assessment that happens. And not only is it normal, but it's necessary. And this is particularly true around safety. And I don't mean only physical safety, although that obviously matters enormously. I mean the more layered question of whether the person in front of you is actually curious about you, whether they're paying genuine attention, or whether something real is being offered, or whether you are simply a body in a situation, present but not particularly seen. And learning to read that accurately and to trust what you're reading rather than overriding it because you want things to go well is one of the more important skills that we develop in intimate life. So the problem isn't that we are assessing. The problem is what tends to happen instead of genuine assessment. Because for a lot of us, what's actually happening in those early moments of a sexual encounter isn't assessment at all. It's acceleration, a move towards momentum, towards action, towards getting past the uncomfortable uncertainty of the moment as quickly as possible. So we keep things moving, not because we've assessed and decided to proceed, but because slowing down feels too exposing. Staying in the uncertainty means risking something. So we tend to race through it. And underneath that acceleration, if you slow down enough to look at it, is usually a couple of fears. Perhaps the fear of rejection, which would say something about your worth, or the fear of being truly seen, which might feel even more exposing because you could let someone all the way in and still end up feeling like you're not enough. And so both of these fears produce the same kind of response, speed and anxiety, to try and get past that moment of vulnerability, to get to the part where the decision has already been made for you and that anxiety can finally settle. And so this means that a lot of sexual encounters can begin not from a place of desire or longing, but from anxiety management. And we're looking for the discomfort to get resolved. So that momentum tends to carry things forward. And so we don't always notice what got bypassed until afterwards, when a specific quality of emptiness arrives that we can't explain because everything technically just happened. So this is where the question of worth enters for almost all of us, across all genders and relationship structures and all levels of experience. Because for a lot of us, sex has become the place where the question, am I enough, goes to get answered. Am I desirable? Am I wanted? Did I perform well enough to be chosen again by a hookup, by a partner, or by a spouse? The spiral is often the same, despite the context. And it makes sense that sex becomes this for a lot of us, because we live in a culture that has spent a very long time tying sexual desirability to our worth as humans. So of course it became the place that we go looking for proof of our worthiness. But here's what that does inside the actual experience. When your sense of value is riding on the outcome, your honesty becomes a liability. It can feel like you can't actually ask for what you want, because if the answer is no, we'll interpret that as what that means about us, or that you can't show uncertainty, or a preference, or a longing, because that might feel like handing someone evidence against you. That worthiness audit cuts across all genders, and it dismantles both our capacity to connect and our capacity to have pleasure. So we perform and we manage the experience toward an outcome that will confirm that we're enough. And what I want to know is that this can sometimes be a type of fawning response. It may not always be rooted in trauma, but it is almost always rooted in a disconnection from our own inner world and from any real access to the person that you're actually with. And this is why for some of us, we can have sex regularly and still feel hollow, or why something going wrong in bed for us can feel like the floor has just dropped out from under our entire sense of self. Because for so many of us, sex is not just sex. It is load-bearing. And how this plays out depends on the relational contexts that we're in. So, for example, in long-term partnerships, it tends to accumulate slowly and quietly. Desire often gets deprioritized under the weight of a shared life. Familiarity produces a shorthand between people that can feel like intimacy while actually replacing it. Partners stop being curious about each other because they assume they already know. And desire, which needs some quality of aliveness and genuine attention to stay present, can dim in the absence of both of those things. So the answer there isn't just novelty for its own sake, but it is about bringing real curiosity back to someone that you may have stopped truly seeing, including yourself, which is a more intimate act than many of us expect from sex. And in casual and non-monogamous contexts, a different but equally quiet assumption can be disrupted. The assumption, perhaps, that less relational investment means less need for genuine connection, that a situationship or a casual arrangement is exempt from the requirements of attunement because nobody signed up for depth, apparently. But what I see consistently is that for people in these contexts who perhaps are lonely in ways that they struggle to name because they agreed to something that suited them in one situation, but they didn't anticipate how much they would still want to be genuinely seen within that context. And this changes the structure of what they understand they're in. And so the structure changes, but the human need for being known underneath it largely does not change. And so across all of it, what keeps coming back is the same thing. The skills that make sexual connection possible are the same skills that make any genuine connection possible. Curiosity, attunement, and the willingness to slow down rather than accelerate through discomfort is the capacity to be present with ourselves and another person rather than managing their impression of us. And these are not personality traits that you either have or you don't have. These are capacities, and they're developed through practice, through the slower, more uncomfortable work of noticing where you've been performing rather than where you've actually been inhabiting your own erotic experience. And they will often start with a question, not, will this sex go well? But instead, what am I actually here for? What do you want from this encounter, from this person, from intimacy itself? What do I want? And asking ourselves honestly, not just what is safe to admit or reasonable to ask for, but being with the truth of what emerges for us. Because we can't co-create something genuine with another person without first doing the quieter work of knowing what we are actually bringing. Because in a culture that trains us to perform desire rather than embody it, these questions are far more radical than they sound. Because knowing what you want and being willing to say even some of it out loud, slowly, in whatever relational context you're in, is the beginning of sex that actually becomes meaningful to you. Connection has never been something that just happens to you, but it is something that you participate in with some honesty about both what you're bringing and what you're hoping to find. And that is what genuine sexual intimacy asks for. Not a perfect technique, and not the right circumstances, and not even magical chemistry that generates itself without anything from either of you, but just more of you, actually present, in the room, with each other, in real time, tolerating the feelings as they move through you and between. If this video has landed for you, let me know in the comments what came up for you. What insights did you have? I love making these videos for you, and your feedback helps me understand more of what you would like to hear from me and how I can better offer knowledge and insight and questions to help you have better relationships, better connections, and better sex. And if you would like to know more about working with me, head on over to my website, cyndidarnell.com. There you'll find opportunities to work with me for counseling and coaching with individuals, couples, and polycules all over the world. You'll also find my book, Sex When You Don't Feel Like It, The Truth About Mismatched Libido and Rediscovering Desire, plus a slew of online courses that you can study at home at your own pace for a fraction of the cost of counseling and coaching with me. And please, as always, like, share, subscribe. This is how we teach the algorithm that these videos are worth watching. I really appreciate you being here with me, and I will see you next time. Bye for now.